All right, we've still got a good number of people that are logging on, but in the interest of everybody's time, why don't we go ahead and kick off this panel discussion. I want to thank everybody for joining us, whether you're joining us live as we're broadcasting, or if you're viewing the archive version. We appreciate you spending some time and enjoying this conversation that we're privileged to host as NAIFA with three of our great friends and three other associations that we do business with every single day, with ACLI, with SIFMA, and with IRI. So joining us today on our panel discussion is Susan Neely. Susan serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the American Council of Life Insurers. ACLI represents some of the nation's largest and most respected financial institutions. ACLI member companies generate 2.6 million jobs in the United States, protect 90 million American families, and invest $6.4 trillion in the U.S. economy. Prior to coming to ACLI, Susan served as the President and CEO of the American Beverage Association, as an Assistant Secretary for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, as a Special Assistant to President George W. Bush, and in a number of other key leadership roles in some of the nation's largest and most respected associations. Ken Bentsen is also joining us today. Ken is the CEO of SIFMA, the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. SIFMA is the voice of the nation's securities industry, bringing together the shared interest of hundreds of broker-dealers, investment banks, and asset managers operating in the U.S. and global capital markets. As President and CEO, Ken serves as the securities industry's voice before legislative and regulatory officials, working to promote fair and orderly markets, informed regulatory compliance, and efficient market operations. Prior to coming to SIFMA, Ken served in a number of leadership roles in the association management and public policy arenas, including serving as president of the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association and as a member of Congress, representing Texas's 25th Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives for 8 years. And Wayne Chopus. Wayne's with us. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Insured Retirement Institute. IRI is the leading financial services trade association for the retirement income industry. IRI members represent the entire supply chain of insured retirement strategies, including insurers, banks, asset managers, broker-dealers, distributors, financial advisors, and solution providers. Wayne is a true veteran of the life insurance industry, having served in senior leadership roles and addressing a number of key strategic initiatives within both Prudential Financial and the Hartford. Wayne holds several licenses and certifications and has worked as a producer or leader in the industry for the past 3 decades. And I'm Kevin Mayeux, and I have the privilege of serving as the CEO of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. NAIFA is the oldest and largest professional association in the industry, with 25,000 members across the country, representing the frontline advisors who help 90 million American families achieve financial security. NAIFA has chapters in all 50 state capitals and in the nation's largest metro markets. This year, NAIFA celebrates its 130th anniversary, and we are proud to partner with each of you as we strive to do good things for the American consumer. Each of our associations represents different aspects of the financial services industry, but for years, we have chosen to come together and to collaborate, to combine our unique strengths and perspectives as often as possible when we have a shared concern. We did it working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce regarding the short-lived Department of Labor fiduciary rule. We've done it on tax reform, and we're doing it today as our nation struggles with the effects of COVID-19. With COVID-19, we found ourselves discussing how each of our associations is responding and coping with this pandemic, and what we can best do to serve our membership groups, as well as stay true to our associations and making sure they achieve their respective missions. We put this panel together to address what each of our groups is doing as some of the leading associations in our space, so that our respective members can get a broader picture as to what the larger industry is doing in light of the virus and its impacts on the lives of just about everyone in the United States and around the world. Today, we will focus on the new normal and its impacts on Main Street USA, regular American individuals, families, and small businesses, and discuss the effects of COVID-19 and how we can use this as an opportunity to open up a dialogue with more people about financial security so that they can be better financially prepared, not just for today, but for their futures. And so for this, as far as format is concerned, I'll ask a couple of tee-up questions for each of us to discuss, But feel free, panelists, to add your insights. And if you hear something that someone else says, feel free to just expand on that. Let's just have a good dialogue. And so, Susan, let's start with you. I know many of our participants today and those that are viewing through the archive version are well aware of ACLI through our longstanding partnership and the collaboration we have on so many topics. When it comes to COVID-19, what are ACLI and your member companies doing? How has this pandemic impacted your mission, and what has been your response to this crisis so far?
Well, first of all, Kevin, thanks for inviting us today. This is a very distinguished, NAIFA is a very distinguished organization, and I understand we have over 1,000 folks participating today. And one of the positive things we were talking about as panelists before we got on is that, wow, this is a very, very powerful way and efficient way to engage. And I don't, how that transforms what we do going forward, I don't know yet. None of us know, but this is a really nice opportunity. And thank you for having us. In terms of our COVID response, I think, as your members know, life insurers are essential services, insurance are essential services, and one of the first things we had to do on behalf of the members is make sure that all the governors, as they were moving to emergency operations, designated us as essential services so that we could continue to pay claims and be there for all the policyholders and consumers that are the #1 priority for all of us. Mission accomplished there. Of course, the companies were ready to operate remotely and to continue to pay claims and address questions and serve their consumers and their communities. We are very proud of what has been accomplished. And of course, we've worked with you to achieve some regulatory accommodations so that we could get producers who had done everything, all their classroom training, all they needed to do was take the exam and get their license and be out there joining the NAIFA membership. We work closely with you to get those kind of accommodations done. So that's been sort of, COVID life has been intense. It's been important. And I, for one, am very proud to be part of this great industry that is so essential to, always so essential to families' economic security, but particularly now as we're navigating the likes of which we've never seen before.
Thanks, Susan. Wayne, tell us a bit about IRI and how your organization has responded to the pandemic.
Okay, great. Thank you. And again, appreciate you having me on the panel today and for all joining. And as you had mentioned in the opening, we are representing the entire supply chain, the value chain of the retirement income space, including the insurers, the distributors, the asset managers, the solution providers. I think the first thing we had to do is as this came through late February, early March, we had our initiatives for the year. We had our strategic priorities aligned, and we had to quickly pivot and determine what were the needs of our members in the next 30, 60, and 90 days. So we established 3 COVID-19 principles, so to speak. The first, we made sure everyone was aware that we're here for them and we're open for business and here for them in any way that they need us to be. We want to continue to be strategic leaders on behalf of our members for the industry and wanted to improve or double down and increase the amount of our transparent communication that we have, along with the collaboration that you referenced earlier with a lot of the folks on the phone here today and some others who live in the DC space as well. We also want to make sure that our employees knew that we were focused on being a caring employer to them, and that their safety was our primary concern. So as we thought through what that meant, that was hard to believe. It was less than 60 days ago. It feels like 6 months ago. But we had to then really engage our board at a level they've never been engaged at prior. And they've been incredible leaders in this time for us, not only our board, but our executive committee. And we had to get together and make sure that we knew what they needed now and what the major initiatives were going to be as we go forward. And we had to reprioritize our full year of strategic initiatives as well. And I'll highlight a couple later. One that was our 5-point recovery plan for retirement savers. We worked with our broker dealers, our asset managers, our insurance companies. We thought about what is it the consumer needs in this time, and what is it that we would want to work with Congress on for retirement savers in the needs of what consumers need. And the focus there was on keeping money longer and saving more now. So we have some proposals that are out there as we speak right now to increase the RMD age up to 75. Obviously, Secure just moved it to 72 recently, but give a chance for retirement savers to recoup losses that may have occurred in the last couple of months due to the market volatility. We have a proposal on eliminating some barriers to allow greater use of some lifetime income products, specifically QLACs, which we think have some old restrictions that could use some updating, and some proposals on saving more, which would include allowing catch-up contributions for those that have been impacted by COVID-19, whether through the illness, whether through job loss, or whether through having a family member. So those are the types of things that we started discussing in very short order, and we continue to pivot and move forward with every week as the virus, as the health of the nation, and as the economy changes literally on a daily basis.
Thank you. And Ken, to say that the markets have been impacted by COVID-19 would be pretty much a drastic understatement. How has SIFMA responded so far?
Well, first of all, Kevin, thank you for having me. And SIFMA believes NAIFA is one of our great partners, along with ACLI and IRI, and so we really value that partnership. SIFMA, as you know, represents the capital markets business, both upstream, downstream, retail and institutional. And you're right. I mean, if you think about where we were at the end of February to where we ended up at the end of March, at the end of the first quarter, and you saw volumes grow multifold, the VIX grow to the highest level that it's probably ever been, and the worst quarter in equity markets since the Great Depression. Now, a lot has changed in the month following that. But where we sort of came at this when the world kind of got turned upside down was in a number of areas similar to what Susan and Wayne have talked about. Number one was, how do we make sure that we kept markets open and functioning as efficiently as possible, particularly as firms were beginning to send people to remote locations or home. And today, most of our members report anywhere from 75% to 90% of their employees, whether they're retail or institutional, or working remotely or at home. So that was job number one. Job number two was, as Susan correctly pointed out, making sure that the states, and in some cases other nation states, where you have international operations or back office operations, were deeming financial services essential personnel, because even though you were trying to put as many people remotely as you could, you still had to have access in some instances. Number three was working with our regulators on the need for and I agree with Susan on the term, regulatory accommodation that was necessary. And this kind of underscored some of the, some of my colleagues might consider 19th century, but 20th century rules that the industry operates under, things around physical securities and mail delivery and the like. Very important, but nonetheless, not necessarily built for this environment. And after every crisis, we go back as part of our BCP planning for the industry and look at what happened. We did with Superstorm Sandy, we did with 9/11. And actually, we, at the behest of the Bush administration, with a number of others back in 2007, developed a playbook around pandemics that the Bush administration was interested in at the time. And so we were able to draw upon that. But there's still a number of things that I think going forward, and this will be sort of the next stage of how do we adjust to whatever the new environment will be, even if it's over a medium term or a long term. How many people will be in the office, how many people won't be in the office, and how do the rules around compliance, operations, how do those work so our respective members, many mutual members, are able to serve their clients. And so that's what the work will be for us going forward.
Kevin, could I just build on that? Because I do think it's one of the opportunities we want everybody to hear about that's participating, and you can be an important voice in advancing this. But Ken's exactly right. I mean, we're calling these temporary accommodations, the e-notarization, e-signatures, the ability to finalize licenses for producers without them having to, come in, paramedical testing that that you limit what has to be done in person. I mean, you all know the list. We've gotten permission to move forward with those things now, and we believe it's a real proof of concept as Ken's saying, that this works. It's more efficient for the consumer. Consumers are adequately protected. And our big objective as an industry should be to push forward and convince state regulators and where appropriate federal regulators that this is just should be the way of the world, and it will make the business of the business so much better, but importantly, better for consumers. So we've already are building what we call our regulatory modernization agenda. It's exactly what Ken says, and just people should know we'll just be driving forward on that. And I would just close with one anecdote that we're not the only ones thinking of this. We had Ray Farmer, who's the director of insurance in South Carolina, currently the elected president of NAIC. He brought it up on a call with our members last week, not with us whispering in his ear or suggesting it or being persuasive or all the things we like to do to be good advocates. He just said, heck, this is working. And we'll need to look at these things and make changes going forward. He was one of the first commissioners of insurance to agree to temporary licenses of producers. And you'll appreciate this. He said, I was not going to stand in the way from all those young graduates coming out of our South Carolina universities and colleges who were all ready to have their first job, and they were all ready to be a producer, and I wasn't going to stand in their way. And they've already got 150 that they've approved just in the last couple of weeks. So I thought that was cool. He felt passionately about our profession and our industry as part of the future and where young people in South Carolina should be headed for their careers.
And he's exactly right. And this does provide us with a lot of opportunities to modernize, to update a lot of those archaic rules, laws, regulations, whatever they might be in the different states, and really bring us not just into the 20th century, but into the 21st century, where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Wayne, so, the whole industry is changing, and we're learning a lot of stuff through this crisis. What lessons have you or IRI learned so far?
So I think there's two to come to mind, and one plays into exactly what Ken and Susan were just talking about around the fact that our digital solutions are not quite the Amazon-like experience that most of our consumers expect in what they do day in and day out, right? So when we talk about what's changed permanently, I'm optimistic that as we think forward, and as IRI work closely with our board to release our forward guiding principles around advancing digital solutions that we just released a couple of weeks ago, tied into exactly the items that Susan had just mentioned around risk-based transaction models and e-signature solutions and medallion guarantees, that we do realize when we come through this, and we will come through this, that this is the way that we should be doing business from a consumer standpoint and an advisor standpoint going forward. So I'm optimistic that that's permanent. The second, I want to say this is a lesson learned. I'll say this is a lesson reaffirmed, is that consumers are always going to need personalized financial advice from an advisor. And it's not that some of the robo models are not good for some in certain situations, but when you combine a health crisis and an economic crisis together, I don't think there's a substitute for the value of advice that an advisor can give. Nationwide, as an example, recently did a survey just a couple of weeks ago that found about a quarter of the respondents who had never used an advisor before are now seeking to engage one as a result of the pandemic. So, there's so much value, so much good in what our industry delivers day in and day out, in good times and in bad. So many products that offer security and protection you can't get anywhere else. But those come to light through the education and the experience of the financial advisor community. And again, that's not so much a lesson learned, but just reaffirmation of the value of advisors.
Kevin, a couple of things that are interesting, and one we may want to get into a little bit more as we go on is, I think, we're going to go through a period of, I think, an intermediate period based upon science, medicine, all that, and returning to office. And we've been doing a bunch of RTO surveys with our members. But that'll be governed by what firms feel comfortable with, what their employees feel comfortable with. But at the same time, a lot of the executives I speak to are saying, they have a lot of employees or advisors, associates who aren't necessarily going to want to come back to the office or don't necessarily need to come back to the office. And in fact, maybe as efficient or more efficient not in the office. So we'll talk about regulatory accommodation and things like that. But I think what executives are talking about is really, the business model or the logistical model around the business may change on a more permanent basis. It caused by the pandemic may have gotten there another way. And I think firms are going to think about that. The second thing I would say in talking with my colleagues and folks in the industry is, in the financial crisis, everybody kind of went to their corners and folks didn't know what's going on. What's happened now, and we just did a survey, we haven't put it out yet, we're still cleaning it up, is the advisors, 75 to 100% who are working remotely, have been reaching out to their clients on a regular basis, most more than once a week. And it sort of underscores Wayne's point about that connectivity between the advisor and the client. And I'll just give you one sort of personal story. My wife and I were talking to her parents who live in Wenatchee, Washington, Apple capital of the world in Eastern Washington state. And they're in their 80s, retired, obviously, salt earth people. And my mother-in-law, who I think knows what I do, but I'm not sure, but just out of the way says, oh, and our advisor from, I won't say the firm, but our advisor has called us a couple of times just to see how we're doing. What do we need? Anything I can do for, he knows that, my father-in-law has some health issues. And it just underscores the role that advisors play in the retail wealth management business of that constant connectivity. And I think that's being underscored in this current environment.
Yeah, and just if I just have one last thing that, if you don't mind, a lot of the broker dealers that we talked to, let's call it on day one, were concerned about, how would their advisors that have been in the business for a long time handle having to use technology more often, and then B, how would consumers who, in theory are not big proponents of technology that, maybe in their retirement handle it. And they've both been they've all been really pleasantly surprised at how well they've adapted and how some of them could see this, to your point, Ken, as sort of a new normal of how you meet. You may meet more and you may meet in a different environment, but it could become more permanent because it's worked well.
Absolutely. And I think, from the advisor perspective, we're doing these sorts of events with our members 2 to 5 times a week, but they've got an opportunity to interact virtually. You're seeing people on your screen, you're talking through your camera and your microphone, and you feel that connection. That same thing is translating to the way that they interact with their clients, their customers. They're able to sit back and check in with somebody instead of being across the kitchen table from them or in the conference room of their office. They're able to just connect with them via Zoom or whatever sort of platform they're using, see how they're doing, make sure that they are up to date with the latest that's going on as far as policy and what opportunities exist, but also provide reassurance and to help provide stability and to help people understand that the advisor is still there for their clients, through good times and in bad, and particularly during a pandemic like this. Susan, what lessons have you learned at ACLI?
Well, I think what you and Wayne and Ken have said is all correct. I think it's also just our value proposition to the American economy, to American families, to our communities, our country. It's always been there, but as Wayne said, it's a lesson reaffirmed, and it's at times like these the guarantees that we offer and the support we provide to families is unparalleled and essential in their lives. So it does provide an opportunity for us, both from a standpoint of the business, but also those of us, which is all 4 of our organizations that represent this broad industry before policymakers and regulators. It gives us an opportunity to reaffirm why we are so essential and why we are unique and special. So that, I think, has been driven home big time, and that's a good thing. We can get into politics and where the politics and policy puck may be going in this conversation, but there'll be a reckoning. I think Congress is doing what it has to do now to meet the needs of the people in this time of unprecedented economic hardship. but there'll be a reckoning 2021 and beyond in terms of how we pay for this, who pays for what, and we need to be, as an industry, a standout, an industry that has been there for people, that's been there for the community, that's essential to the economic recovery, and what we say about ourselves now will be important to how we're seen as leaders going forward.
Susan, you raised a couple of important points there, sort of looking down the road. I mean, one thing I might note that all of us know well is, well, I don't know what it was, March 20th, whatever, the first day we did a test work from home and then never went back. And
5 months ago, right?
Yeah,
5 years ago, whatever.
or maybe about 30 pounds, I'm not sure. But in any event, there's still a lot of other stuff we've been working on that's still happening, right? So we still are looking at, Reg BI being fully applicable by June the 30th, and firms and advisors are having to do a whole lot of work on that now in a much more complicated environment. So there are issues that everybody's having to juggle here a little bit, including policymakers, right? So they're trying to keep the economy going. They've unleashed this tremendous stimulus, both legislatively as well as using the Fed balance sheet, which seems to be working at least right now, and hopefully will work. But at some point, you're right, there'll have to be a reconciliation. I think what will be important is, frankly, the work that our members do day in and day out that you're pointing out will, I think, underscore the importance of financial advice and the risk of policymakers coming back and looking at that as as something to curtail or something to tax or whatever else. But so I think that what our members are doing day in, day out for their clients will have tremendous benefit in this future reckoning that you point out.
Completely agree.
Yeah, Wayne is a longtime producer and leader in the industry. How much of this new normal do you think is permanent?
I think Wayne may be on mute.
I'll start over. I hope I remember what I said.
It was really good.
Again, in terms of, I knew I was going to do that at least once on this meeting, but I think a lot of this becomes permanent, and I think the reason it becomes permanent is everything you've heard in the first 30 minutes of this call is around how all of us, first of all, are doing what we're supposed to do in times of crisis for our member companies, and how our member companies are doing what they're supposed to do in times of crisis for the consumer, and how well it's working, and whether people are surprised it's working well or not. If you go back 60 days and you look at where we are today, it's working well. It benefits the consumer. We're creating easier experiences for the advisor, and to some degree with the products that have protection components to them. As you watch the market do what it's done in the last 60 days, Americans are being reminded that the market doesn't always just go up, and that in some cases you buy protection products, you pay the fee associated with the protection products because the products do things that allow you to sleep better at night and do things that most other products can't do. So, I am optimistic and confident that when you combine the fact that things are working as well as they are right now, that the consumer at the end of the day is the one who benefits, that us as respective trade associations are doing what we're supposed to do. I don't know why we take steps backwards and not have this as permanent going forward.
Susan, what sorts of conversations are you at ACLI having with your member companies? Are they discussing things about changes to their products and services or how they do business?
Well, I think in the immediate here and now, the value proposition is clear. Wayne referenced the guarantees that are associated with annuities and how that's, brought forward as an even, smarter investment than ever because of the times we're in. You know, a third of the small businesses in this country were feeling the largest share of the impact in terms of American business from the closing of our economy. A third of those small businesses have life insurance policies that give them access to emergency capital. You know, another important benefit that's highlighted in these times. And we don't have survey information yet. Actually, our colleagues at LIMRA will have this, but anecdotally, we're hearing there's a 30 to 50% increase in the sale of life insurance policies in this time, which interestingly, if you consider past as prologue, you go back to the Spanish flu, the last pandemic in the 1900s, and there was an increase of in-force business of 46% at that time. So if our anecdotes are right about the here and now, there's a 30 to 50% increase. It's, you know, right in that sweet spot. So all of that's to the good. You know, I think there's been media coverage on member companies of ACLI just looking closely at the impact of the pandemic, but I think that's more temporary. That's sort of understanding what the risk is, and you know, we want to provide these protection products to people, and we want to make them as available as possible. So that's where we are right now. You know, again, back to sort of the policy perspective, how does the need for an even stronger safety net, hopefully provided by the private market, for the American people is going to be debated, you know, for I think the next decade by policymakers. And where the opportunities are for us as an industry to again, expand what the private market does in terms of security and expand market opportunities, that's a big question. And nobody's figured it out yet, but it'll be something I think we'll all be collaborating on going forward. And again, this is not all gloom and doom. There are going to be real opportunities out there for those who have the right value proposition as an industry and know how to step up and tell their story.
Agreed. And those that are nimble enough to do it.
Yes.
For sure. There's so much going on. You know, we talked about it earlier about, you know, Congress considering these massive relief packages. So much of the, you know, the attention of the entire world is how do we deal with the health impacts of what's going on, but also on top of that, the economic impacts. You know, Ken, you're a former member of Congress, and you know, you also have the unique perspective of, you know, running one of the biggest associations out there in the United States. What are you hearing about, you know, how policymakers might balance out between health concerns and economic concerns, and what role can we all play as key players in this industry to help move things forward in a constructive way?
So I think right now policymakers of all stripes understand that, you know, in the effort to contain the spread of COVID-19, the idea was you effectively and having people shelter in place, or whatever terminology you want to use, effectively put the economy in a coma. So this is a self-induced recession. And in response to that, you know, policymakers recognize they need to provide support where the federal government is effectively the lender of last resort. So the Fed itself, Federal Reserve, obviously is opened up its balance sheet like really never before, and that's saying a lot given what they did back in the financial crisis. But in my sense, they are thinking they're going to make everything available that they can. They're going into markets they haven't been in. They never were really in the municipal bond market, and they're opening up, with some exception, opening up to that. But my sense is they're signaling that we will be the lender of last resort to provide liquidity to the marketplace to keep it stable. But our hope is, and in effect, how they're pricing a lot of the programs that they have is, you know, they prefer people to go to the market. So they're, you know, they want to sort of put everything out there to provide stability, and I think they're doing that. I think Congress obviously is trying to, you know, in the words of former Chairman Bernanke, you know, also sort of throw money out of helicopters or whatever you will, again, just to keep the consumer side of the economy going, and also trying to keep small businesses afloat. And, you know, to be fair, and we've not been involved with the PPP, that's not, other than providing information to our members, because that's not really in our mandate. But, you know, you took something where you basically, you know, the Small Business Administration, I think, makes on average about $30 billion of 7A loans a year. And they pushed out 600 billion, or trying to push out 600 billion over the space of about 4 weeks. You know, so the pipes aren't really built for that on a program that was written up. But I kind of give policy members the benefit of the doubt, because they're working with what they know when they know it, and they are responding as quickly as they can. Are they going to get it right all the way? Probably not. Who would? But the fact that they're doing it, I think, builds confidence. So I think we have to get to the other side here, see whatever that is. We have whatever type of, you know, whether it's a V, U, swoosh. I guess I was reading today, I was trying to figure out what swoosh was, but you know, I kind of take, you know, this is Ken Bentsen's view. You know, I like what Warren Buffett said the other day, right? He said, never bet against America. And, you know, and he's also a long run player, so I guess that gives you a lot of latitude. But that I think the policymakers are doing everything they know to do and what they should be doing. And we will get to the other side, and then we'll figure out how we'll deal with it at that point in time. Now's not the time to worry about that.
Well, and the question is, what is it, a V, a swoosh, a U, or a vaccine that truly puts us on the other side, which is, that means we're just going to be navigating this for a long time. The issue I'd raise on as a build on what Ken has said, though, is low interest rates, and their impact on our industry is real. And but it's not just our industry. There's an impact on retirement savers, and talk about upending the equation we were all taught that a dollar saved today is going to be worth more in the future. I was heartened to see some of the comments from the Fed just in the last couple of days that they do not see negative interest rates as a possibility in this country, unlike elsewhere in the world, but still essentially zero rates poses challenges for our industry. And one of the things, we completely agree with Ken that the response has been what the response is needed to be. And we're still responding and trying to navigate this, and maybe for many months, but we need to raise awareness of the impact of sustained low interest rates on families and their savings and their ability to have the protections they need to fully recover from all of this. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there, and welcome the chance to figure out how to tell those stories in a way that thought leaders in Congress and the White House and elsewhere will listen.
Agreed.
Wayne, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to commend Susan and her group actually for taking a lead on kind of that low interest rate lens from months ago before the pandemic hit, getting a lot of, you know, her member companies together to think about, like, what does this look like in the long run? And obviously not foreseeing a pandemic necessarily, but it's a real issue for our member companies who create products that give these guarantees, whether it be life insurance or annuities. That I've been very impressed with the collaboration across the trades, as we've talked about, and some of the leadership at many of our companies that have really stepped up into more present industry roles as well. But it's also commendable how hard our companies have worked to keep products accessible and affordable to consumers, and continuing to keep that consumer lens in mind throughout, which makes me personally proud to, be part of this industry as we see people step up right when consumers need them to step up.
Well, and I would add, Wayne, that IRI and ACLI have really joined a LIMRA-led effort to examine this from a consumer and business operations standpoint, the impact of low interest rates. That started before the pandemic, as Wayne indicated, and I think there's going to be a lot of good intellectual content and data and analysis and arguments that we can all use to explain the impact. But IRI and ACLI have partnered with LIMRA on that. That's really taken the lead. So that's part of the unity of this industry is great, and it helps us win in the ways and places that we need to win.
Agreed. All right, putting your hats on as association presidents and CEOs, what does 2021, 2022 look like for your organization? Ken, where do you see things with SIFMA once we get past this and we adjust and we're moving into a new year or the year after that? How do things look for your organization?
So it's a good question. I mean, something we think about and of course, and don't really know. There's some things we know, some things we don't know, right? So, again, the business was in a very strong position heading into, heading in the first half of the first quarter. To be fair, certain parts of the business did pretty well in terms of trading volumes, but overall, not a great first quarter, right? Again, we will come out through this. There will be, the economy will at some point, wherever we are, when we get it to the other side, we'll have pent-up demand, and that will be beneficial to the industry. How does that affect our members? Those are good questions, because our members are going to have to decide, are they going to have, again, we talked about, working remotely, all those sorts of things, but I think they're still going to need the collaboration that you get through trade associations that we provide as industry convening bodies. Now, will that be virtual like we're doing today, or for how long will it be virtual that we'll be doing this, to going back to in-person conferences and webinar roundtables and things like that? Will we see a shift, just as I think our members will see, in, again, more people working remotely probably than in a central office location or branch office locations, to also more content being delivered virtually, even in a post-COVID environment when people are happy to get on planes and go to restaurants and do all that? Probably. I think, along with that, we're likely to see even better technology than we have today developed around this because of the ingenuity of the American economy. And so, we're sort of thinking through all these things now. I certainly think we want to go back to a lot of what we did before, but we shouldn't be afraid to see this as an opportunity, just like our members are doing and how they're dealing with their clients, how we deal with our clients. And so we're looking at those. Right now we have to, but then I think we should learn from that, 21, 22, what do our, just like what our members' clients want, what do our members as our clients want?
Very true. Susan, how about ACLI? What does ACLI look like in 2021, 2022?
Well, that old line about opportunities and challenges, which those of us who run associations all like to use, right? Well, those will be there'll be plenty of those, of both opportunities and challenges. On the opportunity side, the need to restart and recharge and help the American economy recover and American families recover their economic security will be the big priority of leaders at all levels of government, and we need to be in there and figure out what that means and how we help lead and support. I mean, it's what we're built to do, and kind of figuring out how to do that in a way that's relevant, both our role as the long-term investors, the patient capital that supports communities and infrastructure. That's huge. How our products, how we can do more through policies to make more of our products available to more people. That's a big opportunity. We've already talked about regulatory modernization and how some of these that started as temporary accommodations can become permanent. But then on the challenges side, we're going to have to figure out as a country how to pay for all of this that we've just been agreeing to. And that's going to mean tax discussions at the federal and state level. Who's got money? Well, that's businesses. So we'll have to be very vigilant on those things. I would say just at the state level, there's already 5 or 6 states that have budget shortfalls this year, and they don't have budgets passed yet, and they don't have rainy day funds, and they're big states. So they'll be having special sessions and, again, looking around for where they can go for resources. And we have to be clear that we're an important part of the recovery. We're important and have a unique value proposition. And we're not just an open checkbook that's available to help, pay for all the recovery. So that's just some of what our future will bring. I like Ken, we can't ignore Reg BI and the importance of implementing that. The NAIC model, which we all supported, just essentially was approved and is in effect now in the great state of Iowa. Not that I'm from there or anything, but Iowa did lead the way on the NAIC model, hoping to set the pace for the rest of the state. So those kind of things are still very important as well. But I think that economic recovery and how we pay for it and how we advance it will be central to our agenda going forward.
Agreed. Life is never dull as an association executive. Wayne, how about for IRI? What is the next couple of years?
Yeah, so similar thoughts there. I think to some degree, it's all of our responsibility on this call to think forward to what next year looks like, but it's also just as important that we're focused on, navigating the crisis today. So I really think it's, what is the 2.0 version of this look like in 2021 and 2022, not just from, as Ken mentioned, what we do from a remote standpoint, and based on the amount of calls I'm getting from commercial real estate agents, there seems to be a fear that a lot more will go remote than not, in terms of not just trade associations, but businesses in general that can afford to do so. But ultimately, you join a trade for times of crisis, not for when all is well. And our members, don't have necessarily infinite resources to go to these organizations. So, we're focused today on what we did, which was pivoting our legislative strategy, moving forward and accelerating our strategic initiative that we have around ops and tech. I think there are quick wins that we will demonstrate, and to some degree have demonstrated thus far, but those don't end in 2020. I think a lot of where we want to go, for example, on the ops and tech front, will take time to get the industry to go there. It will be the most rewarding, I think, but also the hardest to implement. And we'll look closely on that. And we'll look at what does member engagement look like going forward. And maybe it looks like a combination of what we're doing now and what we used to do in the past. I have talked to a lot of executives at our companies that still say there is no substitute, especially in the trade association world, for the networking and in-person aspect. And while there are a lot of benefits to doing a meeting as we're doing this now, having a coffee with somebody at a meeting, I think still some of my best dialogues, some of my most productive outcomes have come from events like that. And, we're a resilient country, we're a resilient industry, and, I know all of us here will be here next year to serve our members' needs as we move forward.
Amen. As we wrap up, I know we're getting short on time. I just want to, again, remind everyone that NAIFA members are the folks who are on the front lines of the financial services industry. And our members are the ones that actually meet with everyday Americans, find out what their needs are, help them put together a portfolio, the right products so that they're better financially prepared for life. And the future will find NAIFA and its members doing more to improve the financial literacy of the American public so that the average consumer can think about what sorts of stuff they need to be considering to put together their financial plan, as well as raising awareness about meaningful career opportunities that exist in this industry and encouraging more talented young men and women to become financial professionals within our industry. So I guess with that in mind, and with our audience that's joining us here today live and those that will be looking at the archive versions, is there anything that you can think of that advisors particularly should be doing, or that NAIFA members, or even NAIFA itself, can better do to support your organization and our shared mission? Let's start with you, Susan.
Well, I'd like to start because I want to start with thank you. We have had we've always had a strong partnership with NAIFA, but I think this year, and my gosh, we're only 4 months, not even into the year, but this year we have really taken that to a new level, collaborating at the states. At the state level and the state capitals. And we're just so grateful for that. I can't tell you how much stronger you NAIFA members make our advocacy in our ability to get the right outcomes for the industry. It's unparalleled. And that's because you live there in those communities. You really can connect the policy and advocacy objective with people's lives because you're dealing with them every day. And you can tell the stories that really can change hearts and minds amongst those making a decision. So thank you for all you've done. And we're just going to need more of it. I just think the states are going to be very active. As I said, they've got budget shortfalls because of what's happening. And we're going to need to collaborate more strongly than ever. But again, let me go back to just thank you for all you've done and how effective you are at uniquely sharing the value proposition of this industry and what we do to protect people and their lives. Just work on those stories and be ready to share them, whether it's through a Zoom conversation or in person with your governor or state legislator or your member of Congress or whomever, because it makes a huge difference.
We're on it. Thank you. Wayne, how about from IRI's perspective?
So, as you know, I've spent a lot of my life in distribution, so I have a very high appreciation for advisors in general. And as I said earlier, advisors are necessary, advice is necessary, and you're the eyes and ears in the industry. I think, Susan referenced it, that you're going to see trends ahead of the curve. You're going to capture client intel before you're going to look at motivations at a consumer standpoint, fears, concerns. You'll all know it first. And I think the more that not only do you know it, but you socialize it, the better as we work on, what policies can be worked on behind the scenes to align with, the fears, concerns, and motivations of the consumers that all of you serve. Kevin, you and your organization were one of the first to endorse the 5-point plan that I mentioned earlier around advocating for the public policy in light of this crisis. And as that continues to move forward, and as we continue to have more dialogues, in DC around that, I think this is a great example of, more of a grassroots effort that we can have in partnership with each other. And we do have a board working group tied to advisor engagement that obviously we've had to stall a little bit in the last 30 to 60 days. That's going to restart. And I think there's a lot of great partnership opportunities for our groups together. And again, I will echo Susan's comments on thank you for the event itself and hosting the event, but also for all the work the community that you represent does day in and day out for our consumers.
Our absolute pleasure. And Ken, how about from SIFMA in your perspective?
So first of all, thank you for hosting us and allowing me to join. And I want to echo what Susan and Wayne said. There's a great quote by the former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis about the only position more powerful than president is citizen. And in many respects, that's true when you think about financial advisors and the voice that you have, because you all are the ones who you have the client. You're and you are where really where the rubber meets the road, and your voice is so powerful because you're actually in the business. You're actually doing it. You're talking to real people, what they're talking about, what they're interested in, what their hopes and dreams and fears are, and there's just nothing more valuable in what all the work that we do as an advocacy organization, as an industry organization, whether it is on advocacy, whether it's on industry standards, whatever it may be, because you all are the ones that are going to have to implement the rules, live with the rules, and explain the rules to your clients and hear what your clients have to say back to you. So that's partnership is so extremely powerful, and your engagement. We are only as good as frankly as our members' engagement and allows us to execute on your behalf. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to be NAIFA members and members of our organizations. And again, the partnership with NAIFA, ACLI, and IRI is I don't think has ever been better, frankly, since I've been around. And I just think it makes us all stronger together.
Thank you. And I just want to say Thank you to each of you participating on our panel today. Our industry is blessed because we've got amazing leaders, not just in the companies and the institutions that provide the financial security products that benefit really all Americans, but by the fact that we have talented, smart, trustworthy leaders heading up major associations in our space. And so on behalf of NAIFA and our members nationwide, I want to thank each of you for your service, for your leadership, and for your partnership. NAIFA has a new brand tagline this year, and it works for us as an association, but I also think it outlines the great work that our organizations do collaboratively together. And that tagline is, together, we can take on anything. So thanks again to Susan, to Ken, and to Wayne for your time and for your insight and for your friendship. And I want to thank everybody who's joined us today for our presentation. I'm Kevin Mayeux with NAIFA. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.